All right, guys, welcome back to the Sex and Bacon podcast. On today's episode, I have with me the lovely Kerin Elise, and we're going to talk all things health, fitness, body image, and how that, can affect a woman's overall mental health, mind, spirituality, and then, in turn, that really can affect your sexual health as well. So thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited to have this conversation. So, do you want to just kind of, for everybody listening, give a little bit of background about what it is you do and kind of the space that it is that you work from right now?
So I started out as a personal trainer, actually, a very long time ago. As a personal trainer, I just wanted to get in great shape. I had a very difficult relationship when I was younger with my own body and weight. My weight was all over the place. I did the typical start-stop diet, and I'm starting again on Monday, and I'd willpower my way to weight loss, and then I put it all back on, and for me back then, I really believed, although I didn't necessarily express it, I believed that the reason I wasn't really getting the guys I really wanted to date, like the super hot, successful, bad boy, has it all going on, like why I wasn't attracting them was because of my weight. And I would see all the other women, I'd be like, oh, he likes her because she's skinny. And that was always the thought that was going through my mind is he picked her because she's skinny. And I hear this so much now. But anyway, I started out as a personal trainer and I was doing bikini competitions. And at the height of the whole thing, which is a very long story, but the height of the whole thing, I had finally gotten to my perfect weight through pure starvation, a little bit of bulimia, and a lot of exercise, like hours of cardio. And I looked exactly how I wanted to look. And I was so proud of myself. And as soon as the show was over, I was like, I'll eat bad this once. And then this once turned into 6 months later, all the weight I'd lost, plus an additional 60 pounds. And I didn't even know what else to do to like get it back off. And it was at that point that I had this kind of coming to Jesus moment where I'm like, I can't do this anymore. Like my happiness is worth more than looking a certain way. And that was the beginning of healing my emotional eating and my relationship with my body and my weight. And from there, personal training branched off into life coaching, weight loss coaching, but in a very holistic and spiritual way that supports a woman's whole body, her whole life, and her unique individuality versus this cookie cutter. We all need to diet the same way and exercise the same way, because it's not only is it unrealistic because we're at different stages of our lives, hormone levels, preferences, there's so much that goes into it. So it's been an evolution ever since then. And now at this point, I have so many clients come to me that are single and they do believe that their weight is affecting their dating life. And I know that's how we connected because I saw your post and I was like, oh, I know this story very well.
Right. Yeah. So let's talk about that because when I grew up, I'm not sure how old you are, but I'm 42. So growing up, social media wasn't a thing, and there wasn't phones, and there wasn't all this access to, seeing what other people look like online and the filters and all of that. But even at a young age, I still had that belief that like you had to be a tiny girl or petite or thin to get the good guys or to get the hot guys, and the hot guys only liked the perfect thin girls. So, and even now you still hear people, adults my age, they'll see a couple out together and they will say like, oh wow, that's crazy, I wonder why he's with her. Like, and it is still that visual that we have in our mind that two people that are together have to look the same. You can't, it's like you'll have the tall, thin, ripped guy, but then if he's with like a full figured, curvy girl, they'll be like, what the fuck? And which is very unfortunate. It's very sad. And even when I have people that'll sometimes say those things like, yeah, it doesn't make sense when you see them together, and I'll be like, well, maybe they actually like each other for personality, or, like, it's like, I remind people that there's something else that sometimes people connect over. And it's not just some physical attribute of you look exactly like this. And so then that's the only thing I find attractive. With that being said, obviously that is something at a young age, and it's been there for decades, this belief system. So I guess in your opinion, where is it, do you think that this really stems from, that belief is something that at a young age, as girls, young girls, women, that we have come to believe that about ourselves, that really is what determines, who we have as a partner?
Well, I'll kind of take it a step further with what you just said. I feel like the opposite is true, that if you see a really good looking woman with an older man, or, especially when there's a substantial age difference, or like,
Mhm.
oh, well, she must be with him for the money. It's
Totally.
like she couldn't bring anything else to the table. It has to be the money.
Yeah.
So, and actually it's really funny because my boyfriend's, his parents are divorced, but his father is with a woman who is 20 years younger than him. And she's stunning. And everyone thinks that she's the gold digger. And the ironic part is she makes all the money. So
Nice.
it's like, talk about, turning the
Flipped
table of
stereotype.
what
Yeah,
social
totally.
norms are. It's like so different. Where do we, to answer your question, I don't know. I don't know where this comes from. I think it just comes from decades of women needing to look a certain way and be a certain way. And men usually held the power and they held the money and they had the careers. And so like our job was literally to look the part.
Mhm.
I don't know. I'm really not sure. I'm not sure where it comes from. I am seeing, though, a huge shift in the next generation, because there's a 10-year difference between myself and my brothers and sisters,
Mhm.
10 plus actually. And I go out with them to bars sometimes because like I said, I'm 37. And it is very interesting to watch my youngest brother. He is 24 right now. He's in college. I went to a college, well, kind of a college bar, but everyone was like 50 plus in there. So I'm like, I don't know who you're hanging around with. But anyway, we went there, and it was interesting watching the young women that were around his age walking around. They are definitely embracing being full figure and being like, I'm hot, I'm owning it,
Yeah.
which kind of brings me to, I have different feelings about that. Really, what I believe in is health. And it's like there's that balance between really owning who you are and being like, I love how I look. And then also, how are we optimally taking care of our health? And
Mhm.
I don't personally believe that we've really bridged that gap even in this day and age. I feel like we went from stick figure, thin, anorexic, don't eat, God forbid you eat,
Mhm.
like, why are you eating so much? To now this like, we don't care about health because we're embracing being full figured and we're calling that health. And I'm like, I don't think so. I think we missed the mark somewhere along the line.
Yeah.
But I know that's kind of like a touchy subject for a lot of
No, but,
people.
you know what? 1000%, I do agree with you, and I know that that might, offend some people and whatever. 1000%, like, when people even ask me, like, "Oh," like, they'll say, "Okay, you're a picky eater," or sometimes I'm like, "Well, I don't eat meat," or I'll eat it, but very, very rare, and it's
Mhm.
just like, "Oh, why?" And it's just like, "Well, I eat things that make me feel good." So, it's not
Yeah.
about I have this idea in my mind of a diet, or I can only eat this because for these reasons. It's I know how I feel when I eat a lot of sugar, which then I usually get headaches and I feel sluggish. So, why do I want to eat these things that don't make me feel good about myself? And,
Mhm.
I'm not productive in my day if I've eaten such a heavy, food, or certain meats make me feel really sick. So, for me, it's always been about how is it making you feel? And we do know that obviously people who live off of, say, greasy foods, fat foods, they don't feel very good, because that is when health issues come in, of, let's just say, heart
Mhm.
problems, other issues. So to me, it's just like, okay, like you said, there's that balance. It's eating to feel good, to optimize your health, which in turn, I do feel like some people just naturally have a certain size that their body sits and looks better at, that, they seem to want to stay at. For me, it's kind of more on the petite side, no matter what I eat. I have friends who sit, at a little bit of a curvier, but they eat healthy and they still exercise. But this might just be kind of where, their body likes to kind of sit in a little bit more of a curvy state, but they're like, I feel good, I exercise, I eat good. And so I'm very happy with where I'm at. I think, like you said, it's one extreme to the other is where people have kind of gone, and there isn't that middle of, like, what is actually good for me though.
Yeah. Yeah. So a lot of the work that I do is helping women heal emotional eating and binging. And this is so, it's so interesting because I've had so many women come to me and they're like, well, how much weight am I going to lose? How much weight do I
Mhm.
have to lose? And I'm like, I don't really know, because all right, listen, sometimes when you look a certain BMI, like you do want to take into factor, like this is at a unhealthy,
Mhm.
weight. So we want to factor that in. And then, especially if it's causing type of like diabetes or,
Mhm.
cholesterol issues, whatever. But all in all, if, I've had women come to me that they're struggling with binging and emotional eating. You wouldn't know it. They don't look like it from the
Mhm.
outside. I don't look at them and go, I feel like you have a weight issue. Like, I don't see that. But the mental the emotional
Right.
draining and what it's doing to their confidence and their self-worth is so heavy that it's destroying their life and just how they feel about themselves and their experience in this world. So it's, you really can't be, that judgmental. It's really
Mhm.
about the experience of the person and how they're feeling too. So
Yeah. Which, I
yeah.
mean, the sad thing, like you had said, it really does affect then your dating life. And if women are
Mhm.
feeling that the reason that they're not getting dates and the reason that nobody likes them or loves them is because of how they look, it's like that self worth and that unlovable feeling that you have being attached to your body image, which is
Mhm.
really, what it's like you're trying to heal and get away from that.
Yeah, I had a woman reach out to me recently and about weight and possibly working together. And it was really interesting because we went over, she then started sharing with me about her dating life. And she was saying, like, she's like, I just have this belief that the Jay Shetty's of the world and Lewis Howes, they would never be attracted to my type. And she's like, and the reason I feel this way is because if you look at them,
Hmm.
those kinds of guys who are very put together, good looking, have it all going on, successful careers, they're with model types. And I said, that's interesting. I go, I hear what you're saying. And I agree. From the outside, that's exactly what it looks like. It looks like these good looking guys that have it all together, great careers, they only want the model type. I go, it
Hmm.
looks like that. Or you could kind of maybe have like a bird's eye view of this whole situation and look at it like maybe the reason why they went after that woman is because that woman has had to do all of this work to become that woman. And what they're ideally looking for is a woman who has everything to bring to the table and she knows what she's worth.
Hmm.
And I think that's the major disconnect because I know back when I used to look and see these great, the guys that I really wanted to date, I had this whole story going on like, oh, it's because she's the model type. She's super skinny. She's so good looking. But now looking back, I'm like, was that really it? Or was it that I was so not confident and I was putting off that energy? She wasn't.
Hmm.
And that's what we're trying to shift here. It really has very little to do about weight. And that's what I find so interesting about the dating is because listen, if you want to lose weight because you want to feel better about yourself, absolutely go for
Hmm.
it. But it's not necessarily the thing that's going to get you the guy ever at all.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, no, I think that that is true, and there's a lot of power in that because it really is. And I've had guy friends that have said it's like, and like sometimes like they're with fuller figured women and whatnot, and they're like, but it's her confidence. She's just so secure with who she is, and it's never even come up of a conversation. Whereas sometimes you'll have, he's like, I'll take a fit girl out for dinner. And all she's having is the salad and the low carb drink, this and that. And he's like, and it's kind of exhausting. He's like, I want to go out with somebody who, once in a blue moon will eat wings on wing night and have a beer with me and laugh with me and isn't
mhm,
sitting there being like, I can't eat that or how many calories are in that. He's like, that's the part that becomes exhausting about the woman who seems to believe that their looks and why I'm with them is so attached to, being this stick person or super thin. He's like, it's hard to keep up with. He's like, because I want to enjoy life and enjoy foods, and I want the person I'm with to feel like they can enjoy life and enjoy foods and not have to worry about that potential extra 100 calories that day, but we had fun. And to know that I still love them regardless of what we're eating in a day or what we're doing. He's like, but it's just like you can't find that sometimes. He's like, and that's why sometimes, he's like, I prefer dating the girls who are a little bit on the curvier side because I already know that this isn't going to be an issue and it's not going to be a conversation, it's not going to be a fight, and they're just okay with who they are.
mhm. Do you know that's the number one thing I've heard my boyfriend's, not number one, but one of the top things my boyfriend said too. He's like, you eat like a dude. He's like, it's so fun. I love that you eat. I love
Mhm.
that. And that doesn't mean that I'm sitting around necessarily eating wings and burgers at every meal, but I'm not sitting there counting calories and nitpicking over my food or always eating salad. Like I love salad, but it's not the only thing I eat. And it's certainly not the thing I'm eating because I'm so desperate to lose weight. It's something I eat because I actually enjoy it. And there's such a different energy to that. I
Yeah.
am I love to eat at very good places because I like the quality of the food. So I'm very
Mhm.
picky in that perspective. But if I want pasta, I'm eating pasta. Like I'm not gonna
Yeah.
not eat it because I'm worried about how many calories it's in because I know at the end of the day I can trust my body and it will naturally kind of figure itself out. And that's a lot of how I teach my clients. It's if you actually lean into intuition, intuitive eating,
Mhm.
You can trust that if you have a craving for a cookie, you can eat the cookie and you'll be done after one or two cookies and you're just done with it. And so much of this going back and forth with the weight is because you don't trust yourself. So then you end up eating like 100 times more food because you don't trust yourself and you're battling yourself and it's
Yeah.
exhausting. Exactly
So
what you
it
said.
becomes almost like a guilt thing, like you ate it once and then you already feel guilty and you feel you judge yourself for it, so you just keep going.
Yeah.
It's just like you kinda give up and you're like, "Well, I already did it, so I'm just gonna keep eating this."
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And what I find to be really interesting, getting back on the conversation of toxic, not toxic dating, but dating, is how closely linked I see women who struggle with that relationship with food, the guilt and the shame, and
Mhm.
how they then who they're choosing to date too, which is really interesting because they usually end up picking the bad boys and getting that same like toxic hit of like, does he like me? I don't know, he's going to call me. Like, I don't know if he likes me. Like, did he message me yet? And it's like that back forth push pull. And it's that same
Mhm.
push pull from the food, which is really interesting. And
That's
I know I used to
crazy. But no, I love that you said that because I've had a few conversations with people recently and they've been saying the same thing about like that pattern of like the addiction of it's like a spike and then it's like the crash, but then you want to get to back to that spike. And I mean, eating is like that as well. I do find whereas like, it's like you ate something. So for me specifically, I don't buy sweets. I don't keep them in my house because I know that if I do eat it, I'm like, oh, tastes so good. And then I don't stop myself. So it's like
Mhm.
I eat it, eat it, eat it. And it's like, oh, that was amazing. And then it's just like afterwards, I'm just like, why did I do that? Why didn't I just have one? Why and so it's like same thing with toxic relationships. I will say toxic because usually typically that's where, that bad boy kind of whole thing. But it's just like, like that rush of like, oh, it felt good, it felt good, felt good. And then afterwards, like you start to feel bad about it. And you're like, why did I do that? Shouldn't have saw him again, shouldn't have freeze, right? And then it's like that emotional up and down with poor choices in dating and poor choices in eating habits as well where it's finding that balance. So I mean obviously you help women do that through eating, through the coaching, through the working out and lifestyle as well as mindset around that, correct?
Yes, yes, we get into all of that because when you have that wave, that pattern,
Mhm.
you are getting something out of the high. So where you want to go is like, what are you getting out of it? A lot of women aren't even aware of what the high is, like what, because this is what I hear a lot of times. Well, I'm not getting anything out of it, but you
Mhm.
are. Because if you weren't getting anything out of it, you wouldn't be doing it. That's just not how our brains are programmed. So whether it's the toxic relationship you've been trying to leave forever,
Mhm.
or the food, the eating like high quantities of food that you don't want to be eating, you're still getting something from that high charge, that like emotional charge. For the eating, I personally found that a lot of it has to do with when a woman is in that cycle of dieting. The diet represents the restriction. It represents being the good girl. It represents her mother maybe not
Mhm.
allowing her to have food, doing it the right way. I mean, this stuff goes
Mhm.
really deep. A lot of it has to do with your background and your history with food. And then when you decide to have that purge or you break and you're just like, that, like, I call it like a fuck it moment. And so I don't know if I'm allowed
Mhm.
to curse on here, but
Yeah,
you have that,
absolutely.
that fuck it moment and you're like, I don't care. I'm just going to do whatever I want to do. It's that revolt against whatever that symbol is for you. Like, again, it could be your mother. For a lot of women, it's their mother, but there's something, it's like the revolting against the good girl, like Miss Perfect. I'm just going to do what I want to do and nobody's going to stop me. And this is my time. And it's a lot to do with sorry. So a lot of what I unravel or help women unravel is how can we get that released without it necessarily having to be food? And then also, how can we instill healthy habits without
Mhm.
it feeling restrictive? So I think for so many women, we diets don't encompass a woman's feminine nature. And I don't know how much you talk to your audience about like feminine versus masculine energetics, but the short of it is with feminine energetics, that is about that opportunity to be flowy and freedom
Mhm.
and where you can change your mood or change your mind. So many women are like, well, what do you want? How do you want me to exercise? How do you want me to eat? It's like, how do you want to eat? I don't know.
Mhm.
It's your body. Like, what's your natural instinct telling you? So much of the work that I do is helping my clients figure out who they are and come back to them. And through that, design a plan that works for them so they have that creative license to kind of go back and forth and say, you know what, I'm really desiring to do a long run today, or a dance class, or a spin class, or a yoga class. But I think the same thing, kind of bring this full circle with the dating. It's interesting because the hit from the toxic guy is very similar. You're getting something from it that like it's oxytocin actually, which is
Yeah.
really interesting. So it's that like hit. So it's like, how can you create that same feeling? And well, this goes into a much bigger conversation, but it's like, how can you start conditioning your body and your mind to resonate more with safety and security versus hits of dopamine? And how can you
Right.
give it to yourself instead? So I kind of
I
jumped around
love
a little
that.
bit.
No, but like it's funny, the one big thing that I took away from that, like what you were saying about like that intuitive kind of when people are like, well, tell me how to do this, tell me how to, do that, what's that supposed to look like? And you're like, well, how do you feel? What do you want to do today? What's your body asking for, craving? I know it's for myself. It's like there'll be days where it's like I wake up and I'm like, well, today I feel like doing yoga, just yoga. Or then it's like the next day I'm like, no, today I want to do like a booty workout or I need to go for a walk outside. It's like I do
I love
something
when
every
you go
day,
out.
right? But like
Yeah, not to cut you
it's
off. I was
just
like, I love the
it's like
booty,
the
like the
one thing
booty
I can commit
workout.
to like 5 days a week. But like it's like
Fun.
sometimes I'm in a season of lifting heavy weights and sometimes I'm in a season of this, but it's like I
Mhm.
listen to what it is I'm wanting cuz then if I lift weights when I'm craving yoga, then I start to hate lifting weights and then I don't want to lift weights anymore. And if I do yoga when I'm craving weights, then I start to hate yoga and I'm like, "Well, why am I doing it?" And then to tie that into dating, I do think very intuitively like the guy or dating when it's like it's that person. It's like, well, he doesn't make me feel very good about myself, but nobody else is around and nobody else is giving me attention.
Exactly.
So, uh, okay, well, maybe I'll just have him over again. Or that guy kind of, I don't really think we connect and there's a few things kind of missing. But you know what? Maybe I just need to try harder. And it's like the same thing. It's like we talk ourselves into doing something that we intuitively know that our body does not want, our mind does not want. And I mean, to go really deep, if we're talking sexual, that like our vagina does not want. I mean, in
Yes.
any situation, it's like something, it's like you could be with somebody, you could have that hookup, and then right away you can tell your body is rejecting them. And they're like,
Yeah.
she is like, no, 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 we don't like him. We don't want him back. And we're like, oh no, it'll be okay. We'll just like, take care of it, fix it. And but it all is the pattern of doing the
Mhm.
same thing that we know isn't something that's good for us, whether it's the food, the working out, different styles, but listening to that intuition. So I love that there's that whole mindset, spiritual aspect of healing and teaching women how to lean into that and how to practice that, and then to use it in all
Mhm.
areas of life, right?
I love this conversation so much. I love how you said that your vagina will knows. But the
Yeah.
interesting thing is I don't think you need to wait till you have sex to find out that you don't like a guy. I think you know. I think you can tell from okay, so a lot of people do not agree with me on this, but I have a very good idea. Back when I was single, I could
Hmm.
vet a guy like it was nobody's business. And it saved me so much time because I could easily tell through the messages, the pictures of the posting, just the general conversation, whether or not it was even worth the date. And then if it was worth the date, I could line up 2 or 3 dates in a week to then be able to be like, okay, yes, no. Like, are they worth, and, kind of move them along like that. A lot of women are like, I can't date multiple guys in a week. Why not? I'm not saying sleep with multiple guys in a week. I'm saying
Hmm.
date multiple guys in a week. And if you have strong boundaries and if you're so in tune with yourself that you can immediately be like, love this conversation, don't like this. You know what? This first date was great. I feel like we're 70 for like he's 70% what I'm kind of looking for. Let's give him a second shot. If you can be very decisive like this, you're not going to get so stuck on the like, I don't know, exactly what you said.
Hmm.
I don't really like him, but I kind of think like this, and he has a really good job. I like his car. He's got two
Yeah.
sisters. So we'll just, I guess I'll give him another shot. It's like there's no conviction there. And really at the end of the day, the whole reason why you're trying to give him another shot is because you really don't think you're getting anything better than that anyway. That's the reason.
Yeah,
And
it's so true.
it's the same thing with the food. It's like, well, I don't trust myself with a bag of cookies because then I'll eat the whole thing. And it's like, but if you actually knew that when you went to reach for them, that's what you really desired to eat, you would find the satisfaction in the couple of bites or the couple, like you would just know when you're done and you're complete. And that's what want women to really like feel in their bodies is like, you
Mhm.
can trust yourself. You don't need to settle. You don't need to persuade or take crumbs or anything like that.
Yeah, it's so true. I love that you brought up the boundaries, and I want to kind of like switch into talking to that into that in a little bit more detail for multiple reasons because I think even for some of us that think we have boundaries, it's okay, like these are deal breakers or these are my boundaries. Somebody has to like do this or treat me like this. I know even for myself sometimes it's as much as what it's like, no, I know my boundaries. Something can happen that somebody, say a partner or somebody you're dating does, and you're like, well, that didn't feel very good. And then it's like, you have that conversation and it gets brought up. And then it's like, the whole cycle of like the apology. And then you're like, okay, well, they did apologize. So I guess, we'll give them another shot. And it's like things might be okay for like a few more weeks. And then something else happens. And you're like, well, okay, I brought it up and I was able to speak my truth on it and they accepted. And okay, then they apologized. But it's still kind of that cycle. So if we're talking about, I guess, standards, boundaries, how to create them in a way, like you said, where it's very effective and a person isn't wasting their time and they can be very decisive on what it is that they're looking for. Like, what does that look like? And how are you, I guess, what's the tools and conversations you're having with women to kind of start, going down that road?
Yeah. So the first thing is, because I know, so I just kind of get some backstory. I used to date a guy, and before I had any of this in place, and we did 5 years of, you know, I'm sorry, like you do the whole I'm sorry. And then we do that whole dance. And then I have to
Mm-hmm.
be mad at him for a couple of days or a couple of weeks. And then he has to apologize and then earn my love back. And then, inevitably he do it again. Like it was that whole just ridiculous
Mm-hmm.
cycle. But that whole relationship taught me so much. And I completely changed the way I date because of my experience with him. So grateful about that. But to answer your question, you need to set up your boundaries and your standards way before you meet somebody else. I think the problem is that so many women get into relationships and they have no idea what their standards or their boundaries are until somebody's crossed them. And then they're like, oh, I've got boundaries. And it's like, you're not going to do that to me with like, the finger in the
Mm-hmm.
face. And they're not taking it's not that they're not taking you seriously, but it's hard to take somebody seriously when you're just angrily setting a standard or a boundary
Mm-hmm.
in the moment, in the heat of the moment. Because men will test you and you need to know what your actual standards are way before any of that happens because they can tell the difference. Men are very intuitive and they can feel the difference between an actual standard or boundary and one that you've just decided to add up 2 seconds ago. So the
Mm-hmm.
difference is, let me try to give an example. Just bear with me here because I wasn't planning on answering this question. So I think you see women all the time, they go into dating and then let's just say like the guy they're with is messaging another woman or he's looking at another woman or something and she's like, I'm not gonna put up with that. Like I don't deal with that. Da, 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 da. And they get mad at the guy and then he apologizes and then they pout and they do the pouty thing and then they they kind of let it brush over. They stay mad at him for a while, but then they inevitably take him back, right? And that sets the tone for the rest of the relationship. And if you've had that experience, I think the thing that you really want to look at is what about you? Either because he's one of two guys. Either he's the kind of guy who is legitimately a really good man, in which case you can have a conversation and sit with him and be like, listen, I feel like when you did this, it felt very disrespectful to me, and I'd really appreciate it if I see this relationship really going somewhere. I want to get to know you more, but this really disrespected me. I feel however I feel, and I would really appreciate you not doing this. And if he's a good man, he will respect that and want to have a conversation about it. He'll want to know about your feelings. If he's not a good guy, he's going to hear this and kind of be like, yeah, 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 like brush over it and then do whatever he
Mm-hmm.
wants to do anyway. But if he's not a good man and you found yourself in this position, the question you really want to ask yourself, you don't want to go into like, there's no good men left, as women always do. The question is really, why are you putting yourself in a position with men like this who are not emotionally able to even give you what you want in the first place? Because they're just either A, not there, don't respect themselves, or frankly, don't respect you.
Mm-hmm.
So this goes back to the whole standards part is what are your standards in the first place? In which case, how are you feeling about the guy that you're choosing to go on a date with? And I think this is that so many women, they go on a date with a man and they're so busy worrying about whether he likes them that they're not
Right.
even aware of how is he showing up? What is he talking about? How is he interacting with everybody? How is he interacting with you? Where is his focus and attention? Like, these are the things that you want to be paying hyper attention to on date one, even before
Okay.
date one, especially on date one. So, sorry, did that answer your question?
It did. And I think that I like that you pointed out the fact that when we go out with somebody, it's like we're more focused on whether or not they like us, that we're not paying attention to all the other things. And sometimes I don't even know if we're paying attention to whether or not we actually like them because we are just so concerned with being liked and wanting to feel accepted and wanting to be loved that, dating is hard now. There's so many other things. Like you said, I mean, they're talking to other people. And I know that a lot of women probably have that mindset of like, well, if I tell them that these are my standards and my boundaries, and I tell them these things on like date one, it's going to be like, oh, she's got way too many rules, and I'm out of here. And it's like I find women, it's like we have this idea of what our standard and our boundaries are, but then sometimes when we're in these positions, it's like we become so flexible with them to accommodate somebody else just to try to get a little bit of that self-worth love feeling that we think that we need from that external person, which is then that's where I think like all those things just become so blurred, right, unfortunately.
Mhm.
But and I think I know I grew up being told all the time like, "Oh, you just have to wait it out or, he'll eventually change or he'll come around. Just keep loving him and, hopefully one day it'll get better." And it's like we've been taught that at a young age to put up with so many shitty behavior patterns in a guy that, all of a sudden now when it's coming to the point where it's like we're trying to set these boundaries for ourselves, it's confusing. It's like we know that we've been taught this, but we also know that this is what we deserve. And then you have this mess of like where do I draw the line? Or maybe I'm being too hard on him. Maybe my expectations are too high. And it's just the whole battle of this cycle of, obviously trying to date and trying to maintain what we do actually deserve, right?
Well, I think that goes back to the pendulum swing that we were kind of
Right.
talking about before, is that we went from exactly what you just said about, oh, just love him, he'll change, he'll come around. Now we've gone from that to now being like, I'm not going to take no shit. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
that's what I meant to say before. You were saying about women are scared that if they're on date one and they bring out their, rule book of all the expectations, a guy's going to run in the other direction, and he will. So I don't recommend doing that. This is an energetic thing. It has actually
Mm-hmm.
very little to do with your rules. To be very transparent, after I healed my everything that happened with my ex, I took about a year off from dating, and I really got very clear with myself about what do I desire in a
Mm-hmm.
relationship? What kind of a man do I desire to call in? How do I want to show up? What do I expect? What are his what do I expect out of him? There was a lot that I really healed to make sure that I was ready for another relationship. And this, by the way, in case anyone's like wondering, you don't have to wait a year. This was just for me personally at the
Mm-hmm.
time that I wanted to give myself. But when I did go back into dating, at no point have I ever pulled out any type of like a list of rules or being like, hey, if you do this, you're going to be crossing my boundary. Like, I've never ever said anything like that. Energetically, it was just known. So I
Okay.
think women do this. They think that they have to like explain everything, and you don't. You just have to be very clear inside. It can be felt. They can
Yeah.
feel it. So
Okay.
you just do the inner work. That's what I want to
Yeah.
share before.
No, I love that because I do think that there is something to be said for that. It's like once you've kind of come back home to yourself and you've done that work and you're very grounded in what it is that you know that you want and the lifestyle that you're living for yourself. I do think that that does outwardly kind of project, and that's where you do start to attract in different types of people, whether it's dating, different types of relationships, healthy relationships with yourself, with your body, with body image, with eating, with lifestyle, health. All of that I think really does kind of then all of a sudden just kind of the pieces start to fit together a little bit easier.
Oh, 100%. And I
Yeah.
was going to say too is that, back before I done this work, I used to look at the bad boy, the guys who just didn't have their stuff together, the guys didn't call, they weren't giving me the attention I
Hmm.
wanted or whatever it is that I wanted. I used to look at them as like they were wrong, they were bad, they were, men are awful. I had so much anger and hatred towards them instead of when I went back into dating, when I was very clear that I wanted a very grounded man. That was like my
Mhm.
word, grounded. I wanted a grounded man, a consistent man. And since that was my key word, that was the number one thing I always had in the background was like, does he have this quality? Because if he doesn't have this quality, yes, I want tall, dark, and handsome and all of that too. But it's like, if that quality is missing, this isn't really aligning with the purpose that I have and the intentionality that I'm trying to create
Mhm.
with my relationships. So it's not like, listen, you're going to meet a good looking guy that doesn't have the qualities that you're ultimately looking for. But when I saw them and when they'd ask me out, and once I got a sense that they were not really what I was looking for, I didn't look at them with this anger and this hatred of like, or trying to come in and fix them. That was the other
Mhm.
thing. That was the other major difference as I really started backing off and being like, I send you so much love, but this is not for me. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think if women can come back to love, you can, when you can stay strong in your boundaries and your standards and be coming from pure love, it's the relation, like the way men interact with you, it's a whole different ball game. It's so
Okay.
amazing.
Oh, I
Yeah.
love that. Awesome. Thank you so much for like sharing all of like your wisdom, your experiences and what it is that you're doing and how it is that you are empowering women to make better choices, not even just in lifestyle, health, but also in dating as well. I think that's very important and I do think that is a very full body mindset, spiritual kind of aspect that, is amazing for everybody to be able to get back to. So, thank you for sharing that. Um,
Thank you so much for having
for
me. This is so
yeah,
fun.
I loved it. For everybody listening, where can they find you? Where can they reach out and get in touch with you about your coaching or any of those practices that you have?
Yeah, what you can do is go to my Instagram, Kerin Elise, which is spelled KERIN.EILIS. And then also my website, which is the same. It's just KerinElise.com. And yeah, they can find all the information there. So just send
Awesome.
me a message too. If you find me from here, just send me a message and be like, hi, I
Yeah,
heard you from the
absolutely.
podcast.
And we'll put all your information in the show notes so everybody can access it as well. But yeah, thank you so much. I think that, physical health, mental health, spiritual health, it all plays a part in sexual health, dating health. It's one. It's essentially it's you put all those pieces together and it is one. They're not just separate little things. So it is really important to really work on that all together as like a full body encompassing belief system and lifestyle practice. So thank you for that.
No, thank you. This was such a fun show. This was such a good time. And I love that we're finally, I think, as women, really looking at it from a whole perspective instead of like these individual pieces. So this was such a great conversation. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And thank you to everybody listening. And make sure you guys go give her a follow, check out her page, and definitely reach out for more information.